Alexis, Scheer, and Luis Alfaro, thank you so much for joining us and bienvenidos.
Bienvenidos, hello.
Gracias.
I'm so thrilled because I really wanted to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month with the two of you because you are, in many ways, I don't even know how to like start talking about it because it's like you represent generations of Latinx people in the United States who have been doing art, who have been creating art. And I just love the two of you so much and your work that I was like, I can't imagine like a better duo to have to celebrate what makes being Latinx special and so incredible. So can I start with that as a question? Like, can we brag about why is it so amazing to be Latinx?
We have good food. I'll start there. I feel like I keep writing food into all of my plays just to have food around the theater. And if I like trick everyone like, oh, there are empanadas in this play, then we have to have empanadas in the rehearsal hall. So we have good food. I'll start there.
How do I beat that? I was thinking about this the other day because had to talk about joy, and I guess I was thinking a little bit different. I was thinking we have outsider status, right? We have good history. We have good hard history, and in a way, when you're a playwright or a writer or an artist, you are always pushing up against something. And as a Chicano, I always feel like, wow, I've been pushing up against something for the last 25, 30 years. And it's our history, right? It's a kind of internalized history, but also our real history that exists in this country. So there's something joyful also about not being in the center right now, because the center is like corroded and poisonous, So you're always kind of pushing against something, and that feels right for a playwright. I like the tension that I'm in right now.
Well,
and the food.
Well, I mean, first of all, I just wanted to congratulate the two of you for the amazing receptions to both of your plays before we all got shut down. Like Alexis for how long Our Dear Dead Drug Lord ran. I don't think any of us thought that a play about a bunch of teenage girls, and Pablo Escobar would.
We knew that it would do that. But I mean, it was definitely thrilling, for sure.
Yeah. And Luis, Mojada played all around the country, and you continue to just reinvent what makes classics timeless. And I feel so blessed to be able to cover the field while the two of you are in it. And how much do you know of each other's work? Because I just feel like Latinx playwrights don't get enough credit for how creative the diaspora is with the form and how inventive it is, because your plays are different from Karen Iglesias's plays, from other playwrights of Latinx descent. So can you talk a little bit about how you are inspired by formalistic inventiveness?
Well, we're familial, I think, about I think it's 7 years ago, maybe even longer now. I'm thinking about the Latino Theater Commons and how that started, right? And then meeting Alexis at her play, right? It was right after your play, you went up on stage for that conversation. And it was so intense because you generally, don't meet the family that way, but it was really exciting to hear her play. And then the artist, shows up and there's a conversation, and it was so beautiful. So I would say, we're not that small of a community, but we live like one. I think we know so many people in common, and also we know what the community, where it's at. Do you feel that way, Alexis?
Yeah, totally. And, I got to see Mojada when I was at an Oregon Shakespeare Festival. And so, and then getting to meet you in real life was like, oh, great, one of the veterans. And I do feel like it's big and it's small, and so we all kind of know each other, and I feel like we're all responding to kind of our ancestors and the people who could, like, I respond to Fornez and her work, and I feel like a lot of us, you know, we're all kind of stacked on each other's shoulders and building on top of each other's legacies.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, it's Fornez and Valdez in a way, right? Valdez on the West Coast and then Fornez on the East Coast. Fornez was my mentor. And so I am deeply, deeply immersed in a community that's also feels very much about Irene, you know? And so I would say that that's really been very powerful, because on the West Coast, sometimes there's a kind of aesthetic that, that is very traditional. And then you come to the East Coast and you see something very different. But, you know, I think about this a lot in terms of every community. This last few years, I write Facebook notes, like 1,000-word Facebook entries, you know, and one of them was about Asian American women, this generation of playwrights, and how it's not really recognized as a movement. Like, it hasn't been like really, really illuminated, illustrated. And it kills me, because within that community, you see the variances of writing, right? And so I'm thinking right now, as I'm looking at Alexis, this beautiful face, I'm thinking like the writing is so different. We're writing differently, but our sensibilities are very, very much in line, maybe with our politics, but also with our regional, you know, I don't even know what the word is, our taste, you know, or our regional, because you're very, very much of your region, don't you think, Alexis? I mean, I kind of feel the Boston in you.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's so funny. I've been in Boston the last 10 years, but I always claim Miami as my home because I was born and raised there. And I'm finding that, you know, the Latinx diaspora is huge, and everyone comes from a different place, and Latin people aren't a monolith, and there's so much culture and differences in culture and language, and so I love that in theater. You know, when you talk about Latinx theater, you actually talk about a lot of different backgrounds, nationalities, politics. I mean, my mom is Colombian, so I feel like Pablo Escobar is a part of my family mythology, weirdly, and so that's a thing that I have to like deal with in my work. But I was raised in Miami amongst Cuban exiles, and I saw a lot of that theater, so I feel very in tune to that experience. And then I go to the theater and I learn about, you know, Mexican culture and the Chicano culture. So I love that it's everywhere. It's not one thing. It's just a rich diaspora.
You know, in the last few years, I was at Oregon Shakes for 6 seasons, right? And we subverted, everywhere I go, I kind of try to subvert something in the theater. So they had this really wonderful program called the Black Swan Lab. I don't know if that's what you did, yeah?
Yeah.
Great. And so we took the Black Swan Lab in the last few years that I was there and made the Brown Swan Lab, right? And we turned it into a retreat for a bunch of writers. So our last retreat, which was, you know, really powerful, was all Latina women. And it was like Sandra Delgado from Chicago, you know, and as we were kind of formulating it, we realized we had no Chicanas in there. And it was kind of a great sort of statement on how much we've grown as a community too. And when I was at the Taper with Diane Rodriguez for 10 years, we ran this Latino theater initiative. You know, the last like 5 years of that initiative was really about the new Central American presence in Los Angeles, right? So I live in Koreatown. I don't know if you can tell, it's always midnight in Koreatown. In Koreatown, you know, it's really a Central American community. So how do we illuminate? How do we amplify? How do we create the space for what is really a kind of always ever evolving community, right? Colombian. There's so many amazing Colombian artists now, right? It almost feels like that could even be its movement within itself, organizationally too, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's something very powerful in how we keep shifting and changing, you know? And I'm thinking a lot lately because of our pandemic about maybe the only thing we really can count on is change and how we change. And change is essential. And it's maybe, I don't know if you're all feeling this, but I'm feeling like I'm making art and I also have to make politic, right? I have to change the community I'm in. And this is the moment. A little fissure has happened, right? And how do I take advantage of that moment to change something, because I don't think it'll come again for a long time. Financial interests slowly are ebbing, pulling away at our real political moment, you know? So how do we do that?
And I've been asking myself questions. You know, we always ask like, oh, why this play? Why now? And now I feel like I'm asking, like I'm working on this like micro commission that we're aiming towards launching in January around Inauguration Day. And the question I'm asking myself now is, what do we need? What are we gonna need? And trying to anticipate our sensitivities and in trying to imagine like all sorts of scenarios and trying to create like, okay, what, like really fundamentally, what is my purpose as an artist and what can theater do, especially like in new media like this? There's something a lot richer and a lot, I feel like higher reaching than just like we're telling a story. It's like, oh no, we're trying to enact change and harness power. I don't know. That's the witchcraft, the brujeria. I'm like just trying to like have everyone cast a big spell, and you know, there's performance in that, which is why I mean I love all of that and kind of the marriage of spirituality with performance. I feel like is a big thing in my work.
Yeah, me too.
This moment is asking for that.
I wanted to talk about that so much because, like, you know, I do think of the two of you as the ultimate, you know, brujos and brujas. And I mean that, you know, as a total compliment, because, you know, even though your work is, in terms of style and what you're doing, is very different, what I love about your work so much is that you're reclaiming brujas. And in many ways, I get, you know, for every theater company that does The Crucible somewhere, they need to be doing one of your plays also, because your work is the opposite of The Crucible, where you're reclaiming brujeria as women dancing with the devil. And in this case, don't get, you know, paranoid, like conservative listeners and viewers, the devil being knowledge and the devil being women becoming women because they're using their gifts to be in contact with nature, to be in contact with human beings, and to be in contact with themselves. Mm-hmm. It is the opposite of The Crucible. Like, you don't fear that. Like, you want your brujas to be dancing in the forest, to be dancing in the trees, and to be levitating and to be using their power. So I would just love to hear both of you talk about brujas so much.
It's what my necklace says. It says
well, maybe I'll start by saying that, Alexis, that last image in your play of the dance is so profound. It's so real and so beautifully upsetting and exciting because it is a new form of like release, right? And I love the way it gets introduced in the play and you see it form and then you see it full out, you know? Mm-hmm. I just have to say that was ritual. That was like church. That was like something pretty, like you're calling on the spirits, definitely. So yeah, I agree. It was a profound, even in a reading, right? It's such a profound moment to know that a play has to live in its physical life too. And that it gets animated by the body and it becomes a calling, right? A trance. I love the trance of it.
Yeah, there's, you know, it's the act of conjuring and I love thinking about theater and in terms of alchemy and the alchemy of live performance and how just the act of going to theater is ritual in itself and you know, I love identifying it as a witch. It freaks people out. But there's something like about like, oh no, I feel like we should reclaim this. And because I think at the very root of it, it's self-possession, which, and I think of, you know, what is witchcraft? It is the act of self-possession. It's about, you know, connecting to the inner divine, the goddess, which is always what I try and do in my work, but also just like in my life, because we, you know, live in a patriarchal society where that, you know, and thinking about The Crucible, which, you know, guess who wrote it? So I don't know. So I love the like sort of like in the like one ingredient of theater that, you know, maybe doesn't really exist in a book is like the act of like, oh, we could actually make something. Like if we all came into it and believed, like there's a, you know, suspension of disbelief, and we can all just like allow for something to be possible and allow like an impossible truth to be possible. This is getting very heady. But I love magic, and I love that, you know, in a theater, we can just have some girls around a fire and they can actually, you know, have power. It feels like tangible, and it feels accessible in a way that it doesn't feel in real life, I think. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I was thinking as you were talking about 15 years ago, I did a play called Breakfast, Lunch, and Dinner at Hartford Stage. And it's about a woman who's 750 pounds and she starts to float. And everybody thinks it's about, you know, fat people. And it is, but it's really about a sister who has her by a rope and won't let her go. And it's about what happens when, you know, your sister's going to leave. It's about grief and loss, right? And so I love this act of levitation. I did a play maybe about 6 years ago with Campo Santo, one of my favorite companies in San Francisco, Sean San Jose. He's extraordinary. And I was raised in Pentecostal apostolic religion, very Alleluia church, right? And so I have a whole segment in there that's about 10 minutes of speaking in tongues. And if you've ever heard it, I mean, it's really like conjuring of a spirit, right? And your body does the drink. And he did, like he really studied the Pentecostal religion, and he went up, his research was he went up and down Highway 99 in the Central Valley of California and went to all these Pentecostal churches. So by the time he actually did the performance, there was a 10-minute, very uncomfortable moment of him being in the spirit, right? And you know, the stage directions are, he's levitating, he's doing all this stuff. And there's some lady in the audience afterwards who says, he levitated, right? He levitated. He did, right? And I was like, yeah, he did. Or maybe he did, right? But I think The Conjuring does that, right? And that's kind of one of the beautiful things about theater is if you believe that the magic can happen, it's going to happen, right? We have to believe we're making magic, that we are bringing those elements into the room for sure.
Mm-hmm. And it feels very like political too. And you know, in the reading I've done about when all these covens start to really like make themselves like seen and known, it is in these moments of like political oppression, and it's just a way of manifesting power and showing your power. And you know, we're definitely living in that right now. So
I love that word manifesting, because you know, when I was in Mexico City, somebody said, "Vas a ir a la manifestación," right? And I was like, "What of the manifestation?" Well, yes, and that's not what I thought it was going to be. The manifestation is a political protest, right? So nobody calls it the protest; they call it the manifestación. And I thought, wow, this is so beautiful. We're going to manifest something in the Zócalo, and we're going to make something happen. And I love that language kind of lends itself to brujeria, right?
Oh, yeah.
The spirits.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Oh, and Luis, since you mentioned El Teatro Campesino, and you know their work of using the community to create theater, which aligns with your work of also devising with regular people, and I feel like you were talking about artists as political activists, as citizens, before it became cool, because prior to this moment that we're in, it seems like artists were seen primarily as just entertainers. Like you cannot be political. And during this moment for the two of you, since you can't do your art in the traditional way you have been doing it, like how have you been working on those two things, like being the artist and being a citizen?
Well, I've never been busier politically, I have to say. You know, this summer, I know maybe most of you know that I was part of the Victory Gardens action, and it was a very painful process that we helped put together with a number of people, right? Really extraordinary people. But having our 7 writers, the resident writers, all quit together was the beginning of really challenging the theater and really getting to the transparency they needed to do. And that was really hard. It was hard to leave. It was hard to then create actions and work with the board. And one of the things I'm so proud of is I'm working with a lot of theaters right now. And it's one thing to call the theaters out. It's another thing to help them get right? Unless we want them to completely die, right? Which is another thing. Or unless you want them to leave, like the whole, which is not realistic in other ways, right? So one of the things I've been doing was the Victor Gardens thing led me to CTG, Center Theater Group in Los Angeles. And Dominique Morceau and Daniel Alexander Jones and Culture Clash, and a few of us are part of what we're calling the Artist Collective. And they asked us to come in this moment to help them move, how do we organize again, right? What are we going to walk out with? And we said very clearly, it's not about the moment, it's about the future. We're going to help you figure out what you're going to be, because this moment is already happening. It's already in process. But how do we help you move forward? And that's been really exciting. So, talking to their board and, I can't cheese Miata right now, but, like talking to these boards is really, really upsetting and hard. And so it's the part where I'm most diplomatic, most statements like, I'm trying to be an ambassador, but I'm also really pushing for change. So I teach in the academy, right? I'm at USC, an $8 billion school where only 2% of our tenured faculty are Black and only 3% are Latino. So how do you make change happen from within and force it and do it nicely and do it in a system that it feels impossible to change, right? And this is the thing about being an artist. I think we're creative beings who use our minds in different ways. So every institution that I'm going to is like figuring out how to creatively treat it like a collaboration, a community collaboration. I have to bring the people with me. So the first thing I did CTG was, I'm going to amplify a lot of emerging artists. Now we're like, oh, well, we're really only interested in you. No, that's not the way I work. So, the thing is, I come with the whole community. So are you cool about that? So I'm mentoring two female dramaturgs, 19 and 20 years old. We have about, We have, and you should meet them. I was going to say they're amazing. And then we have about 20 artists that we've done these little micro commissions with. They were doing stuff for the website. So like, in a way, you just start to open a door, and I'm just calling it amplify. That's all I'm doing. There's just amplify and there's process. And so process is trying to create transparency in that building. So I'm doing these interviews, right, like this, where I bring all the people on staff and I ask them very nicely about their jobs and about how they see the future. And then I kindly go into the numbers of people in their company that are BIPOC, which are, right? And then you start to really pick away at something, right? Amplify and process. I got to simplify it for them and for me, right? And for my community. And then I got to just keep pushing people through. And I think that's really been the process for me. I'm less, I was arrested so much when I was young for civil disobedience. I was 16 arrests. Oh my God. I even have a felon for one. So it's like, I'm like, I can never run for president, right? I can't do anything of that. But, like in a way, I think, how do you make this more sophisticated? How do you strike and be more effective, right? So it's been a summer of making art, but also making politic in a way that's smarter, right? And I'm really happy about that. How do we do that, right?
I hope CTG is paying you really well for that.
CTG is paying, and that is like,
okay.
It's really great because part of it was, we're all broke. We're all like everybody, and because I'm lucky because I teach, so I took half my money immediately and just put it out into the community. But taking half your money and putting it out to the community is a great way of saying, listen, here's a $500 commission. I don't want the rights. I don't want it. I just want to let you know you're a great writer. Let's do it. And I did a year in the community in East LA with community writers, right? And we wrote plays. And I said, the deal is we got to write plays and we got to inundate our theaters with plays. We got to write good work. So, if I could, I would do the foreign-ass thing. And I just haven't been able to find a place where somebody wants the foreign-ass thing to happen again, right? In that way. But I think it's eventual that's what we have to do in the community is, create the space for the writers to make the work and to demand something of the work, right? to really, to be generous in our criticism, you know, and to think about, you know, that word that is so hard, quality. What is quality writing? What is the craft of writing? What is point of view? What is passion? Like, look at me. Ah! But it means something right now. This is the moment when it means something. You know, I feel like everybody has passion and everybody has point of view, but where's craft and technique? And how do we get that as a community? How are we sharing it with one another? So, you know, one of the joys of meeting Alexis was in a Carnaval, a new works festival put together by the LTC. And that was an amazing experience because you could say, here are 7 to 10 plays, and then a whole list of other plays that are available to be produced, that should be produced, right? That demand to be seen, that speak to the moment we're in.
Speaking about manifestaciones and community, Alexis, what you're doing with your, I call it the Magical Book Club, because I forget what the official name is, what the actual name is, sorry. But, you know, I was there when, you know, well, first of all, can you tell us a little bit about the book club? But I wanted to say that I was there on Thursday. It was Thursday, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Time is so weird these days.
I know.
Yeah. I was there on Thursday, and Louise, you made you manifested also, like Glinda near the end. And it was so beautiful. But what you're doing is right now that people can't gather in, you know, at the theater, you're giving them a different kind of theater in a way, because they're reading plays, and people don't really read plays. And like you're inviting them to imagine, I think, and to conjure also. So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So Speakeasy Stage is a company, a regional company in Boston. And they have been, I think so it's a play discussion club run like a book club. And they've been doing this for the last few months. And they invited me to moderate a series on Latinx plays, and basically gave me 4 weeks and said, what do you want to share with our community and, you know, your community? And so we started off with Melinda Lopez's Sonia Flew, and last week we read Mojada, and Luis got to join us. This week they're all reading Drug Lord, which will be really fun. I feel like it's like when the book club turns on me. But no, they've been like such a wonderful and generous and curious group. I'm so pleased with it. And then we close off the series with Eliana Pipes and her play Dream House. But it's been, I got invited to do this, and I'm like, do I know how to do this? I've never moderated a thing. This is like a talk back, but like we're all just reading a play, and I'm not a playwright on most weeks. But it's just been a blast just to talk about the language and the craft and what's actually on the page. And then all the playwrights have been able to join us and, you know, talk about what's like outside the margins of the page and everything that went into it. I've just had so much fun talking about plays. It's been a nice, you know, aside from writing plays, I like it talking about other people's plays too. So I've been doing that. And you know, back to what Luis was saying too about this moment of creating, but also like making change. First of all, I want to meet the dramaturgs that you're mentoring. I feel like there needs to be like a Tinder for dramaturgs and playwrights, because I don't know how to meet them. How do you talk to them? What do you say? Do you send an emoji? I just want to know more dramaturgs. Anyway, but you know, institutions and opening these doors, and you know, it was looking at the institutions I'm affiliated with and deciding like, okay, what's important to me? And as an alumni of Boston University, I'm working with my MFA program that I graduated from, and you know, which was a wonderful program that I feel like nobody knows about. It was fully funded by the university, and I just want to like kick the doors open, and I want everybody to know about this program, and I want the program itself to, you know, commit to taking in people who write plays that don't always fit, I think, what we have decided as a white society what a play is. And it's like when you're seeing all these submissions, it's like, how do you how do you allow for variance in craft and form and kinds of storytelling, and so those have been really like fun doors to kick down, and yeah, so I've been doing that.
Yeah. Oh my God, I want to hear more about kicking down doors of formally, because like I just wrote the story about this group that's trying to revamp the canon, because, you know, what we consider the canon was dictated by a bunch of white men who loved other white men. And this isn't like a give people advice question. It's more like a lot of playwrights I've talked to who are of color, they always have to struggle when they're trying something new and they're aren't readily embraced by, you know, the mainstream establishment of, you know, critics, artistic directors, producers, because they're not writing within like the formal systems that we are all taught is what is good playwriting. And I feel like that's why Maria Irene Fornés was never quite appreciated when she was still alive by the mainstream, because of those restrictions, and now we're all actually appreciating her the way she should be appreciated. And so, like, what are your thoughts on just like staying courageous and like going with your own instincts and ignoring like what other people are telling you what constitutes a good play?
Wow.
I love. Oh, go ahead. I love reading plays, and I love reading kind of everything, not just plays, and reading poetry and screenplays, and I read a lot of nonfiction, and I read a lot of comic books, and I feel like all of that ends up in my work, and I feel like, what's the articulate thing I'm trying to say right now? I think reading makes me a stronger writer, and I feel like you just have to keep writing, and you have to hone your craft, and you only do that by actually doing it. And so like, I'm always going to be team grad school. Anytime somebody's like, should I go to grad school? I'm like, if they're paying you, go, because you learn about yourself as a writer, and you learn, and I really believe in revision, and you learn in revision, and you learn from listening to your community, responding to your work. And I feel like the more comfortable you get with it, and the more you can like throw your ego to the side and just allow for like play, right? Because we're writing plays, not writing works. It's a play, and the more like confidence you build, it just, and at some point I think you tap into like what you're doing and who you are and why you write. And I think when I tapped into like my intention as a writer and why I'm here and why I am a storyteller and why I am a creator, that was when like kind of the floodgates opened for me. And I was like, oh, I can write. I know how to do this, and some people aren't going to get it, and that's okay. And I don't think that there's like good art and bad art. I feel like there's art for everyone, and I feel like the more critics we get who, you know, look like me and look like you, the better we all are, and the people who, you know, are shaping the conversation about the art. So I love what you guys do. I'm such a fan. Oh my God. That was word vomit.
Love all of that.
Wow. I was going to say that early on, I think it helped that I started as a poet for like 10 years. And then I was in performance art for a really long time. So really that was the bulk of my career, was really going around the country and then kind of going around the world. And, you know, with Guillermo Gomez Peña and people like that, you know, so it was very the avant-garde. But I remember the first play I got produced was at the Goodman Theater. I was talking about this the other day in the class. And I said, there was a guy named Michael Maggio, who was a very important man in Chicago, who used to work at the Goodman. He was a great director. And after the first preview, which was deadly, like half the audience walked out. And and we were doing this, and we were across from, I remember, Death of a Salesman with Brian Dennehy, and they were doing great, you know, and my production was like a crap, right? And I remember we were outside, and he said, the problem is, I think it's an Irene problem, he said, is that the Latinos want you to write something Latino, and the white people want you to write something Latino, and you're resisting them. And I don't know why. He goes, but I think that if you decide not to, you're going to have a lonely path for a while, and you should be okay with that. And so I kind of thought about it, and I was wedged in, I said, between John Leguizamo's Mambo Mouth, that was premiering at the time, believe it or not. And I just thought, okay, there's a kind of lonely journey that's going to happen. So my first, 5 productions were in Black or Asian American companies. So the Latinos took a long time to catch up. And I think they took a while to catch up, not just because of the avant-garde, but because I was queer. So we were dealing with that, right? Like out people. So I remember, I'd go to a company and they'd say, well, the community's not ready yet. And then you'd say like, okay, so you'd go off and get done somewhere else. So I think now it set a wonderful precedent to say that, you have to follow a path. And sometimes it's a lonely path, right? And people catch up. I think of it as people catching up. People catch up to you and your ideas, right? If you're an artist, you're always in the avant-garde. So you're always thinking in the new. And so our job is to not worry so much about that audience, right? I leave that to the theater to do. So when I finally came around to being loved by Latinos, I was really suspicious of them, right? Because it was also like, where were you guys when I was really broke in the 1980s, right? But I get it, right? I get that we all evolve, we all change. And I had to change. If I was going to work in the American Regional Theater, I had to change. And so some of the changes are big changes. And luckily, one of my first bosses was Oscar Eustis, before Trinity Rep, right? When he was in LA. And he was one of those guys who was like, yeah, this one's really weird. This little play of yours is really weird. Like, nobody's going to do it. So, just to be clear, let's all be clear, right? But I think that was a good thing to know. It was good to have people telling you what was acceptable at the time and what was not, right? Like, I think about, I'm looking at you, Alexis, and I'm thinking that beautiful generational shift, even in Boston, between you and Melinda. Like, what a gorgeous, gorgeous transition, right? A beautiful legacy connection there. And you couldn't be two more different writers, but you are of a place, So I think a lot about that. I think a lot about the 10 years that I spent kind of going around the U.S. in really small theater companies. So I was in Boston for a year. And I worked at the Boston Center for the Arts at a company called Theater Offensive.
Yeah, they're still around.
And I lived right above the Dunkin' Donuts on First and Mass Ave, and with the leather daddy and the head librarian for the city. I mean, it was crazy. But I have a kind of a story from every city, because that was the lonely 10 years where, out of the kindness of people letting you stay at their places, and lots of beautiful theaters like the Theater Offensive, who were like, we have no money, but come do your plays. And so I opened for a woman named Peggy Shaw, Menopausal Gentleman, and then Carmelita Tropicana, and I, did a bunch of collaboration, and Kate Bornstein, The Opposite Sex is Neither, I did her tour with her. So, in a way, I think about it now, those lonely years were the years of the muscle, right? Those were the years of like, okay, I'm getting clear about how to do this. I'm getting I love how you said, once you figured it out, you knew you were a writer, you could do this. Yeah, I was getting clear about how to make the work. And that's really, really important. And that's something you want to give to that next generation, the clarity.
Yeah. And I also feel like, because I came to theater as an actor, and I was a child actor, and I went to school for musical theater, and I still act. Obviously not right now. Nobody is acting on stage, only over Zoom. Why I started writing plays, right, was because I wanted to play meaty roles. I didn't, I always talk about, I was 16 at a big performing arts high school in Miami, and I was doing like Harper from Angels in America. Why did anybody let me do that? But because I wanted to like do some serious theater, and that didn't, those roles weren't there for young women, especially not like Latinas. That just was unheard of. And so I started writing mostly as like self-preservation, give myself work. And that was kind of part of my high school's big ethos, was you should be self-sufficient and create your own work. And all of my mentors were doing that and producing and acting in their own plays. And so I always did that, and because my community, they're actors, and all my friends are actors and young women, and so it's like, oh, you're all so talented, how do I give you all work? And so I think that's always been my favorite part about writing plays, is like I just get to work with all my friends, and the more young women I write roles for, the more young women who get cast, and that's always so exciting. And what I love about Drug Lord has been so fun. All of the people who reach out to me and want to do this for their showcase, or I'm working on this in class, and it's like, oh, right, like this is who is like keeping these works alive. It's the actors who love to perform it. And so that's like one of my favorite parts, and really like connects me to like, on the days where I'm like, why do I do this? It's like, oh yeah. So when you open like the monologue book at Barnes and Noble, there are some choices and you have options.
I think that so much.
Don't you think the actors are great writers too?
Yes. There's something about like, and I think this was like a big moment for everything clicking in my brain, where I like stopped trying to compartmentalize my like selves. And I was also a producer for years, and all of those disparate things just like, eventually I'm like, oh, right, because I know how to like act in a play and produce a play, I kind of know what a play should do. So I can actually just write that. It took a while, but I got there.
So thank you for that. And now plug everything you have going on, because I feel like you're both very busy. So let us know about everything you're doing, everything that you can talk about that you're working on, and where we can find it. And Luis, your plays just came out, and the Virgen de Guadalupe cover is so stunning. Like, did you have to like fight to get that?
No, it was all a woman named Rosa Andujar, seemingly the only Latina in London, and she. But she was the one who pitched the book, edited the book. And the company Methuen was about to, shut down for the pandemic, and she said, "If I can get everything in within the month, will you still publish?" And they said, "Yeah." And she did it all. I mean, she was extraordinary. So I give all praise to her. I'm doing a kind of interesting thing. The Getty Museum, Getty Villa, and Center Theater Group. One of the reasons why I'm working there is we are recording all three of the Greeks and live in LA in these new COVID filming guidelines with the filmmaker, and they'll go up on YouTube. So I'm super, super excited about that. And I've been at the Ojai Playwrights Festival, which this year decided, since they didn't have to actually go to Ojai, that they would just stay open as long as they could. So we started in July and we end in October. So it's been the longest play development conference I've ever been to. And Sam Hunter and some amazing people. Oh, a woman that I'm just starting to really enjoy, her Antigone. Oh my God, I'm going to forget her name. Do you know who I'm talking about? She writes Greek adaptations. They're very funny. She did a Minotaur. Oh, shoot. She's amazing. Oh, God. It'll come to me. But anyway, so I'm there, and I wrote a new play about seminaries. And it's kind of my pandemic play, And so it's all about actual seminary in the Central Valley, California, that was closed down by the church, and one of the priests hung himself because he had never been out in the world. He had been cloistered most of his life. So it's all about what happens, in isolation. And writing about isolation has been interesting, You're
speaking my love language right now, like ghosts and priests and trauma. Oh my God, I can't wait.
And you can join me, Speakeasy Stage, join my book club, and we'll read some plays. And what else am I doing? Voting, go vote. Go vote early, please. Yeah, I think that's the thing I'm focused on the rest of 2020 is just, our country, and also making preparations. Like, if we need to shut everything down, let's do it. Let's, be a more perfect union.
I love that so much. Alexis and Luis, it's always a pleasure, and I hope you keep manifesting magic into this world, because we need it for decades and decades and decades to come. So thank you so much for joining us.
And before I forget, her name is Anna Ziegler.
Oh, yes.
I love her. I love her.
I fallen in love with her.
She's done a Minotaur?
She did a Minotaur that's super beautiful. It's funny and quirky and gorgeous. Yeah. and it's all about, you know, kind of involves disability and ancestral love. It's very, very interesting the way she plays it out. It's gorgeous.
I love Anna so much. See, that's someone that we can invite to the show also. I love her so much. I love both of you as well. So thank you for joining us on a Sunday. And God bless you, and may all the Brujxas also bless you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everybody, thank you.
Bye-bye.